this last daf. Today's daf Be'ez Hashem is Masechta Kiddushin Daf Mem Vav 46, and we're going to begin on Menhei Amid Beis by almost by a little after the midpoint of the daf. We're talking about a girl who gets mukudeshes, and sometimes it's the father knows about it, and sometimes he doesn't know about it. So the Gemara is now giving you cases. Let's say you have a girl, let's say 8-year-old girl, she accepted Kiddushin, and her father was okay with the Kiddushin. But in order to validate the marriage, he has to be aware that she's actually going to chuppah. And the father left on a trip to another country. Then she got on her own, Venices, and got married. Now, could be, maybe the father wouldn't have wanted to go through with the wedding. So we don't know if she's fully married or not. Rav said, we consider her fully married, and if she's married to a kohen, she's like the wife of a kohen, and she could eat truma. Until the father came and says, "Oh, I didn't want this marriage," and absolves the marriage. Rav Siyama, and most likely he's not, because we have an idea that he really liked this guy because the Kiddushin happened with his intent, with his consent. Rav Asi says, he doesn't eat, she shouldn't eat truma. Maybe the father's going to come back from the trip and say, I didn't want her to go to chuppah with this guy. It's going to turn out that she wasn't really married, and she's a non-kohen eating truma. And this could be a big mishap. Hava Ovdu, there's a case that a girl got engaged with the das of a father, and she got married without him aware. He went L'Medina Siyam, and even though Rav says you eat truma, Rav wasn't makel for her to eat truma, and we should be concerned, like Ravasi, that unless we know 100% that the father is okay with the chuppah, she should not be eating truma. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, or Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says, Rav would agree, She'im Mesa, if she dies. Now, do you consider her a real full-fledged wife? So the din is Eina Yarsha. She doesn't get an inheritance. He doesn't get to inherit her. You put the money in the possession of her, or whatever, unless you know that she's fully married. It's at best a Suffolk marriage, so to speak, and therefore, if he wants to inherit her, it's like a moitzi mechavera. Oliver Rai has to prove that it was a full marriage. Now that gives you another case. Niskacha Ladas, she got engaged Ladas, Denisa Ladas. She went to chuppah, and we don't know what his opinion is, but Vavia Khan, but the father's here. Now, what's the case? Unfortunately, the fathers and her are not talking, right? So when she got engaged, this 8-year-old got engaged with this guy. She was on talking terms with her father, and then she went to chuppah with this guy, and the father is not saying if he agrees or doesn't agree with this. Rav Huna Einachel. Rav Huna says she doesn't eat. Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amachel, she would eat truma. Rav Huna Einachel, she doesn't eat truma. Why? Even if Rav said that you normally eat truma, Hassam, in the case of Rav, because that case before was when the father went on a business trip. The father is here. So why is he quiet? Why didn't he come to the chuppah? He must be very angry. So therefore, she shouldn't eat truma. She would eat truma. Why? Even according to Ravasi, in the previous case, when the father went on a business trip, we say she does not eat truma, because we consider it like a Suffolk marriage. Hassam over there, who there, the father maybe come back from his business trip and say, "Hey, I didn't want you to go to chuppah." In this case, he sees them getting married; they're going to chuppah. Since he's quiet, he certainly is okay with this chuppah. Hold on. Hi, Louis. We're just 4 lines from the bottom of Memhei Beis. Another case. Let's say she got engaged. A 6-year-old girl got engaged without the consent of her father. Got Kiddushin. Her father's here, right? Imagine her father's here. She takes Kiddushin, and she even goes to chuppah, and we can't get a word out of the father. What's his opinion on the matter? So apparently it might be a fight or not fight. Of Hunama, we treat it like a regular marriage, or chelis. this 8-year-old girl could start eating truma. Rav Yirmi says she shouldn't eat truma. Ula started to comment on this machlokes. Rav Huna's opinion is that she could eat truma. It's like having vinegar on your teeth and smoke in your eyes. It's like irritating to hear it. In the previous case, where it was niskacha ledas v'nisa shloi ledas, Rav Huna says she doesn't eat. So here, so it's both niskacha shloi ledas, v'nisa is shloi ledas. You had 2 strikes against her, and now Rav Huna is going to say you could eat. There, at least there was a Kiddushin Daraisa. She got engaged. So we see that an indication that he liked this guy. Nevertheless, if she went to chuppah without the father showing up for the wedding, Rav Huna says you don't eat. So if she got kedushin over here, shaloi ladas, and she got met, and she went to chuppah without the, we don't know what the father's opinion is, and he's just not showing up to the kedushin party and to the nesuin party. Rav Huna says it's a good marriage. You eat truma. It doesn't make sense. We go to Memvav Na'alav. Near in Divrei Talmud, we see the student, Rav Yirmiyah, seems to make more sense than his Rebbe, Rav Huna. It's my time with Rav Huna. So let's try to understand Rav Huna. So here is a very interesting thing. It's almost, since the father is giving the silent treatment, not saying a word about the Kiddushin or about the marriage, it's almost like he's given up his rights to her. He's like saying, you know what, my daughter's very smart, let her, she can make these decisions on herself. Or his silence must be in agreement to this. So therefore, she's like an orphan in the life of her father. She's making her own decisions. And therefore, Rava says that would be the reason of Rav Huna, that if the father's silent throughout the whole thing, through the Kiddushin and the marriage, we can treat it as if it's a regular marriage. And this 8-year-old, if she's married to a Kohen, she could start eating truma. Itmar, a new story over here. Let's say a Ketana, an 8-year-old, she took Kiddushin from somebody, and the father was not aware of it. Okay, so Amar Rav said, even since if what it means is like this, both her and her father could come along and say, oh, I don't want to go through with this marriage. If her father comes in and says, and it says, I don't want to go through with the marriage, even though she consented to go through with the marriage, it's not a good marriage. Okay? And the opposite is true too. If the father consented to the marriage and she doesn't want to go through with the marriage, it also is going to go through. So we see that to stop the marriage and to say it was invalid, both her and the 7-year-old, the 8-year-old, and her father can do so. Ravasi Ama Avia V'Leihi, only the father and not her. That means we don't take her opinion in the count. So now, so that what Rav's tried to say, that since if she regretted it first, and in Rav's opinion, if she regretted it first and then the father wanted it, it's not going to help. The Kiddushin's invalid. Ravasi says, even if she regrets them taking the Kiddushin, if the father comes later and says, I like this guy, the Kiddushin is valid. Esvei, Rav Huna Ravasi. Rav Huna asked the question, Ravasi, you're saying that we don't take her opinion in at all. Rav asked the question to Ravasi. There's a concept in the Torah called a seduction. A guy seduces a young girl, and the Torah says that really he should marry her. But the Torah says if the father doesn't want her to marry his daughter, even after they had a sexual relation, then he has to pay a knas of 100 shkalim, right? Knas pitui, or 50 shkalim. So Pasuk says, Imoin Yamoin Aviyah, if the father refuses the marriage. Now the Gemara is learning, how did he seduce this girl? He actually told her, hey, let's get married. They slept with each other. And he tried to make a Kiddushin. And the Brisa says that the Pasuk says that the father can refuse to accept this kedushin. Ainly alavia, he asked me. I see that the father has a right to refuse, but how do you know she has the right to refuse? Talmud loima imoin yomoin. It says whoever refuses, then the marriage is not a good marriage. Even if it's her. So we see that even if the father wants it to go through, if she doesn't want it to go through, it's not a good marriage. So this is a question against Rav Ashi. Rav Shashasi says it's only her father has that right to refuse, but not her. Amaluhu Rav will explain to you. And Rav actually is the one that argues on Rav Asi, and he's defending Rav Asi. You can't ask such an impossible question because you're reading the pasuk wrong. It's not that he seduced the girl to get married and slept with her. He seduced her and slept with her, but it wasn't for marriage. Now he wants to get married her. Rav Asi can answer you. There was a seduction, right? Not for the marriage. So if production for the marriage, then the father doesn't have to. So the Gemara says, so therefore there is no kedushin over here. So certainly her and her father can say, I don't want to get married to you, take it to the next step. Now that we slept with each other, let's get married. Even both, we give them the right to say, oh, we don't want to get married. So Frank the Gemara, Peter Shloshim Yusuf Kroaboy, do I need a pasuk to say that she can refuse? And the father can refuse? I mean, obviously, he didn't do any kedushin with her yet. So, of course, they have a right to refuse. I don't need a pasuk to say that the father could refuse the marriage. That's the point of the pasuk. If they don't take it to the next step and make a marriage out of this, then he has to pay the knas of mefuta. So I don't need to. It's not that the pasuk is telling me that the father has a right to refuse. And the pasuk is telling you that if they don't go through with the marriage, then he has to pay the knas that the Torah says. Rabbi Yosef said, everything makes sense. That means the seduction happened in a bia that was done without the intention of getting married. So then, Hainu de Tanina, that's why we learned in the Brisa that if he wants to take her for a wife, the pasuk says, you seduced a girl and you slept with her, you should take her for a wife. And the Brisa said, you have to make a new kedushin with her. So that means the seduction was not the fact they slept around the first time had nothing to do with kedushin. So it makes perfect sense the way Rav just answered the pasuk. If he already seduced her to sleep with her because of ishus, then why would he have to make a new kedushin? The fact that he slept with her and his intention was to do kedushin, so why would he have to redo the kedushin again? Must be that the first time he didn't do it l'shein kedushin. Amalei Abai, that's not true. Tzricha kedushin l'das avia. That's what the pasuk means to say that the father has to be okay and give his consent even after he gave the kedushin. That's what the pasuk means. Really, you could always learn that the first time he had relations with her was l'shein kedushin. But what the pasuk is telling you, Mari Merendo Loila Yishin, that you need kedushin means that the father has to consent to such a kedushin. So anyway, we leave it this machlokes intact with Rav and Rav Asi. If a the father didn't consent, so the Rav says bein hi bein avi akav. The choice is up to both of them to abolish this whole thing, and therefore, if she refused right away, and then the father comes to refuse, Rav says that there's no marriage because she refused the whole thing. Rav Asi says no, we don't pay attention to her. It's a father and not her. New Mishnah. Mishnah says, someone says to a woman, Hiskachli b'tamarazu, be mukudesha to me with the following date. Hiskachli b'zu, or be mukudesha with me with the following date. So he's giving her a date, and then try this date. And if one of those dates is worth a pruta, mukudesha, she becomes mukudeshes. Vimlav, if none of those tomorrow, if one individual tamar, one individual date is not worth a pruta, ain't a mukadesh, it's not mukadeshes. Why? Simply because he said kedushin only with this date. So only with this date, he kept repeating that. So if you can't combine the dates to make a pruta, each individual date either is a pruta, she's mukadeshes, Or if it's not a pruta, she's not mukadeshes. But if he changed his phraseology and he says, I want you to be mukadeshes with me with the following dates, b'zu, 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 all these dates that I'm giving you, this one and this one and this one, if there's a shava pruta amongst all of them, mukudeshes v'mlav ein mukudeshes. If you combine them up and they equal shava pruta, she's mukudeshes. If not, she's not mukudeshes. Says the Gemara Mishnah, he's giving her a date. She pops into her mouth. He's giving her a date. She pops into her mouth. Ein mukudeshes. She's not mukudeshes. Until one of those dates, either the one that she ate, presumably, or the one that she didn't eat yet, is worth a pruta. So we'll have this part of the Mishnah. The end of the part of the Mishnah is a mystery, and we're going to discuss it very shortly. So first, the Gemara, Man Tana Iskachi. Who's the Tana of the beginning of the Mishnah? Amar Rabba said Rab Shimon. The author of our Mishnah is Rab Shimon. The Amma Ache Shmuel Chol Echad Echad. According to Rab Shimon, what separates each statement to a separate statement is the word hiskachi. By saying hiskachi, that separates these things into a separate statement where we will require that each date has a shava pruta. Then the rest of the Mishnah, the end of the Mishnah says she was eating rishayna. She's not mukudeshes until one of them has a shava pruta. So the Gemara asks this last thing, the last case of the Mishnah, what is it referring to? If it's a statement to modify or to give an example, to extend what it says in the Reisha. The Reisha says hiskachali, and if one of them has a shava pruta, then she's mukadeshes. Mar iryachelis. What do I care if she ate it? Afilu manachas nami. Even if she just set them down and said, and he says, be mukadeshes with this fruit, with this date, with this date. If one of them has a shava pruta, of course, the hiskachali bezu kama. He said she's skachali bezu. So what do I care if she ate it? Ela seifa. It's going on the seifa, and basically that means bezu. And you have to combine all the dates into one pruta. Va'afila kabaisa. Even what she ate already is whatever is in her stomach is combined with the dates on the table to produce a pruta, and therefore she will be mikadashes. Says the Gemara. But once she ate the date, v'hamilvi, that is alone. If she owes that date, as long as it's not here, it's not in the world. She popped it into her mouth. That means she really, at one point, owed this money back to him, because he didn't say keep it for kedusha. At the second that she ate it, now she owes a date to the husband, and therefore, when he says, "Oh, you should be mekudeshes to me," that is like giving a woman a kedusha by not giving her anything, but just saying you don't have to pay back a loan. And the halacha is, if you tell a woman, oh, you owe me money, you don't have to pay back the loan, please be mekudeshes to me, that is not a good kedushin. So why is the end of the brisa says if achas man means if in all of them they worth a pruta, she's mukadeshes, but wait a second, some of that dates are in her stomach, and if it's in her stomach, it's a loan. It cannot be combined into a pruta. You can't be mekadesh with a loan. Rabbi Yochanan commented on this Mishnah. Harei shulchan, harei basar, harei sakin. We have a nice Mishnah. It's a table, meat, and a knife. Imagine you have a steak. But you don't have a mouth to eat. You have a sickness in your mouth and you can't open it. So in other words, we have a nice Mishnah, but we have no way of explaining it. So Rav and Shmuel Amri Tavai. Rav and Shmuel said they're going to explain the Mishnah. Really, it's the end of the Mishnah and the beginning of the Mishnah. He said iskachali. The Mishnah is telling you something not necessary. Of course, when he's giving you one date at a time, and he's saying hiskachali with this date, hiskachali with this date, haskachali with this date, the ika shava pruta, then one of them has to be worth of shava pruta then she's mukudeshes iloi. If one of them, none of them are worth of shava pruta, then of course she's not mukudeshes, because we need a actual date that's worth a pruta in order for her to be mukudeshes. Let's say you give her a date that's not worth a shava pruta, but she pops it into her mouth. So I might think that really, in that case, the girl doesn't need a shava pruta to become mukudeshes, because she's popping it into her mouth and she's enjoying it right away. So Hoyel Mekavre Hanaisa, since she gets the enjoyment right away, I would think maybe this girl agreed that she wants to be Mukudeshes for less than a Shava Pruta. So that's why Kamash Malam, that's why the Mishnah tells you, even if she eats it, if as long as there's no Pruta, if it wasn't worth a Pruta, she's not Mukudeshes until one of them is worth a Pruta. Ravami says, well, really it's this third part of the Mishnah is going on the end of the Mishnah, where you're trying to combine all the dates into one pruta, and we're counting the ones in her stomach. So then if we're counting the one in her stomach, then it's a milva. So you're reading the Mishnah wrong. My acheib achasmen shava pruta. What the Mishnah means, until one of them is shav pruta, acheib achroin is shav pruta. What the Mishnah means is what's left uneaten, the end ones that she didn't eat. If those combine into a pruta, then she's not, then she's mukadeshes. But if not, because the ones that she ate in her stomach already, it's gone, so it becomes like a milva, and you can't be mukadash with the milva. And that's what Rava commented. Amar Rava, Shmami no mid Rabami tlas. You three novel ideas from Rabami. Shmami no, from here we see hamakadish b'milva. You give kedushin to a woman with a milva. I mean, she owes you money, and you say, don't pay me back. And that should be your kedushin money. Ain't mukadeshes. She's not mukadeshes. You have to give her something right now. If you're giving her something, a milva and a pruta, then and you say be mekudeshes with one of these, her thinking is the pruta, what's on the table. Because you think about the case in the Mishnah, if she ate one of the dates in her stomach and the dates on the table, and we say that if the dates on the table are worth a pruta, she's mukadeshes, but maybe she's thinking to be mukadeshes with the dates in her stomach. The answer is, if she has a choice, mekadesh with the milva or the pruta, her focus will be on the pruta. We go to Amad Beveis, Ushmamina, Maris Ba'alma Chayzrim. And for what we see from here, that if the kedushin's not a good kedushin, right? And let's say it turns out to be not a good kedushin, she ate it, she has to give it back, because at the end of the day, it was a loan, and if it turns out that none of them are worth a pruta, then she would have to give it back. That's what that's the third novelty of this Mishnah. So Itmar, to take off on that, is hamakadish achoise. Let's say a person gives kedushin to his sister. Okay, Rav says mois choisrim. You give kedushin to your sister. Everybody knows that's how can you make Kaddish your sister? So Rav says the sister has to give the money back. Shmuel says mois matana. The sister could keep it. So what's Rav thinking? Rav says mois kaiser. If you give kedushin to your sister, she has to give the money back, because adam yadesh ain't kedushin toifsim ba'chayse. Everybody knows kedushin will not take it back if you give a kedushin to your sister. So you decided in your mind that you're going to give it to her as a pikad, and she can hold on to it, but she must return it. And therefore, at any time, the brother could call it back from the sister. So said the Gemara, why didn't he tell her that he's going to call it back, that it's only a deposit, that she's going to have to return it? Savar, because he held loy mekabler, she's not going to accept it. Who wants to watch a pikadon, a deposit? So he tricked her into accepting it as kedushin, but really, he could always call it back, and it's the nature of how brothers and sisters deal with each other. Shmuel saber, no, when you mekadesh your sister, you give kedushin money to your sister, mois matana, that's a gift. Why? Everybody knows shein kedushin tarfsim ba'chaysid. Everybody agrees that no kedushin works for your sister. The gama v'nas l'shumatana, you 100% decided to give it over as a gift to her. Says the Gemara, the name of law l'shumatana. Why didn't you tell her that you're giving it as a gift? If everybody knows that, why don't you tell your sister, I want to give you a gift? She'll be too shy and ashamed to take a gift from her brother. So he tricked her, this is kedushin. And that's how he got her to keep the money. So Masa Ravina asked the question against Rav. It says, a guy gives a kohen a little flour now as challah. Now challah is usually a dough, but he didn't even make it into a dough. He had a little flour in a bag, and he gives a little piece of the powder to the kohen. It's not a good challah. The gezel b'yad kohen, the kohen should return it. The kohen is not allowed to keep it. Says the Gemara, "V'amai gezel b'yad kohen." Why is the kohen not allowed to keep it? Name it. Let us say it's common knowledge that only a dough makes challah, because it says arisa sechem. So Adam Yedei, everybody knows Shema Frish and Challah Kemach. V'nasim l'Shema Tana. Everybody knows that that you're not supposed to give flour to a kohen. So maybe and because it's such a common knowledge, so when he gave it to the kohen, it wasn't, even though he said it's challah, it's really a gift for the kohen, and the kohen could keep that little challah. And so why do we tell the kohen to return it if something is so common like that? Shani Hossam over there is different. So this was a kasha against Shmuel. Shmuel says it's a gift, and here we say you have to return it. And says the Gemara, Shani Hossam over there, challah was different. The nafa churva mina, something destructive could happen to that. Because if we allow the kohen to keep it, zimnan the islay the kohen pachas b'chomish avoyin kemach. Let's say the kohen has just the just right under the shear of, let's say the kohen, if he makes a dough by himself and it's the right shear, he also has to take off challah, but he doesn't have to give it to another kohen. He can keep it, but he has to take off challah. So let's say the kohen has less than the shear, a little bit less than the shear of a dough, and he just received this challah. So he knows that this challah, he thinks it's challah, this powder, and he'll knead it into his dough. And now he has a complete shear of a dough. And he thinks that he doesn't have to give off challah and everything's okay, because the part that he just got from this Yisrael, this powder, this kama, is really challah. And so therefore it didn't mashlim the shear, it didn't complete the shear of a dough that is required to take off challah. And he's not going to take off challah on his own dough. And he's going to eat it in tevel. So therefore, we tell the kohen to return it. So says the Gemara, but why would the kohen need to return it? Doesn't the kohen know that you're not supposed to be mafresh challah from dough? So we'll end off with here. Yodei ve'ein yodei. He really does know, but not really. Yodei she'ein mafresh challah kemach. He knows that you don't be mafresh challah when it's a powder, when it's just flour. Ve'ein yodei. And he thinks he doesn't really know the answer. This Savar, he thinks the time I. What's the reason why you can't give flour to the kohen? Why does the Torah demand that you give a dough? Mishum tircha the kohen, because the kohen's thinking because that Hashem doesn't want the kohen now to work it up into a dough. Let the Yisrael give it to him as a ready-made dough. So that's why. But really, if he would give, if the kohen is moichel on the bother, the kohen could accept as challah flour. The tircha the kohen, this kohen, regarding his bother into making it into a dough, achalta, he was moichelim, and therefore that's why the kohen could make the mistake to think that this flour is really challah, because he says, I was moichel to making it into a dough, and I'm going to accept this flour as challah. So the Gemara asks one last question. Again, why do we say for him to return it? Sometimes when the kohen gets a mistaken truma, we tell him, look, you can keep it, but make sure you take off from another area. Make an announcement and tell him that it's not really effective truma. You would just have to take off truma on this truma. We learned in the Mishnah. Let's say the kohen observes somebody taking truma off a flower pot producing fruit that has holes in it, and he takes off the truma on behalf of a flower pot that doesn't have a hole in it. Now, the flower pot that has a hole in it is chayiv truma d'oraisa, because it's getting its nourishment from the ground, and the truma and the flower pot that doesn't have a hole in it is only chayiv and truma d'rabanan. And you're taking basically a truma on behalf of something that min haTorah is not chayiv truma. So it's not really a good truma. And so if the kohen accepts it, he's really not allowed to eat it. Because in order to have truma has to be taken off. You're taking it on behalf of something else. It has to be on the same thing, same level. Nechiv al chiv, a draisa to a draisa, drabanan to a drabanan, but not a draisa off on behalf of a drabanan. So we tell him truma. You kohen, Mr. Kohen, if you see that, you can eat it. You can keep the truma. Just make sure that you take off trumas and maisris on behalf of the thing that you just received, because what you really have is not really truma. So again, what the Gemara is saying is, even if the kohen received this flour, let's command the kohen and to say that don't keep it yet. Make sure you're mafresh challah on this flour that you got, because what you got as flour is not really challah. And says the Gemara, betray money tzoyis, bechad moy loy tzoyis. When the Kohen sees something like the case of the Truma, where the man is taking off Truma from two different items, so he knows something is fishy. So he'll listen to you, the Rabbanan, and if the Rabbanan say that really it's not kosher Truma, he's going to listen to you and correct it on his own. But bechad moy loy tzoyis, if there's one vessel over here, and the Kohen observes that the Yisrael had just one bowl of flour and gives it to him, he's going to say, what's wrong with that? That must be valid challah. So why can't I keep it? So he's not going to listen to us if we tell him, oh, correct it. Make your own corrections. What we do is we tell him that, listen, you can't keep it. You must return it. Okay, we'll stop over here.
Sure.
If you want, they'll give you another text. The coin, when you give him flour, he's going to listen to us and make sure to treat it as non-challah. The ksava balabayis nistakni, but the owner, the Yisrael, thinks that his dough is corrected, and he's going to eat this dough without taking off a no challah after it turned into dough. But Amrit says the Gemara, what do you mean the Yisrael is going to make that mistake? A person, everybody knows he can't give challah when it's flour. And says the Gemara, he knows and doesn't know. He knows that you're not separating challah when it's flour. But he doesn't know the because of the botherment of the kohen. But tircha the kohen kibla, I gave the flour to the kohen. He's thinking that in this case, the kohen was moichel the tircha, this bother of making it into a dough, and really I did a good thing by giving him this flour. Says the Gemara of Tehevi Truma V'Yachsav Yitram. Why don't we still require the Yisrael, announce to the Yisrael, listen, what you gave to the kohen, he's not going to give back to you, but you still you have to make the correction. You did the wrong thing. Again, here you do the opposite. The guy took from a flour pot that doesn't have a hole in it, which is chayiv derabanan, on something that's chayiv midaraisa, truma soy, v'yachsav yitrum, you have to take new truma on the thing that's chayiv midaraisa, on the nokov. So why don't we tell the Yisrael, listen, we'll tell you the halacha. The halacha is you got it wrong. Like Kimno is that the answer is you can tell people when they got wrong if they have a way to believe you. Betray money by two different flour pots size. Then if you tell the Ama Aretz or whoever's doing this with the flour pots that you did it wrong, and so he'll recorrect it. Bechad Mona, but if you tell one, if he's dealing with one vessel and he just gave you a little flour, you tell him, oh, you did it wrong. He says, not true. I did it right. I gave it to the kohen, and the kohen was moichel not to make it into a dough. So I did it right. Lloyd Saiz is not going to listen to you. Therefore, in order to prevent all these mishaps, we asked the kohen, listen, give it back to the Yisrael. Let him know for sure that it wasn't done correctly. Says the Gemara of Lloyd Saiz, is the Yisrael not going to listen? But now we learned in the Mishnah, the Mishnayos do say that if we give a halacha, the people are going to listen. Hatorim kishuas v'nintzas mara, avtiach v'nintzas surah. Truma b'yachzor tritrum. A person made a truma of cucumbers, and then before he gave it to the kohen, while he gave it to the kohen, it turned out to be spoiled or bitter cucumbers. Or he gave off watermelon, and by the time he gave it to the kohen, it was spoiled. Truma, you will yaitze the truma b'yachzor yitrum. Do it again. So why over here we tell him to do it again, and we don't tell him the kohen to give it back to him? Because we trust the Yisrael that if the kohen told him, hey, by the way, what you gave me is spoiled, he's going to re-give truma. Why do we say over there that we trust the Yisrael to listen to the kohen, if we tell him to redo it? And in our case, by the challah, by the flour, we say we don't trust the Yisrael that he's going to give new challah to the kohen after he made it into the dough. And it says the Gemara, Shani Tehosam, over there is different. The Raisa truma al here. Really, Minat Torah, even if you give off truma, and it turns out by the time you gave it to the kohen, it's spoiled, it's a real good truma. B'diavad. Rabbi taught us, if you take off truma and you give the kohen the sort of spoiled part, and you keep the good parts, how do you know b'diavad it's good? Don't do an avera when you do truma. But in Ein Kaddish, if it didn't work, how did you do an avera? In other words, the Torah is telling you, give the best part, the unspoiled part, to the kohen. And the Torah says, but don't do an avera by giving him the spoiled part. but if it didn't work, then you didn't do an averet. So it must be if you take truma off and you give him the kohen the bad part and you keep the good part, the truma is a good truma. So since b'di'evet it's a good truma, so even if the Yisrael is not going to listen to us, b'di'evet it's still a good truma. But by the case of the flour, we were so concerned that if the Yisrael is not going to listen to us, then he's not going to take off new challah, and therefore we ask the kohen, if you got this flour, return it back to the Yisrael so that he will know that he wasn't yaitza, and he will retake the challah on his when he makes a dough.